Is this safe to eat? We sometimes see strange dots on our potatoes and wonder if we should just throw them away. Here are 10 eat or toss facts. Did you know that every year 119 billion pounds of food is wasted only in the United States? To put it in perspective, this number means nearly 40% of all food in America is wasted. People throw away food if they don't have confidence in the ingredients. They're being cautious, and it makes sense. But what if the food is safe to eat and only looks weird? The first item on the list is beef. When it comes to meat, people naturally get extra cautious. Imagine you buy some raw beef in the store. Later on, you realize it's got some brown spots. If you toss it immediately, hear me out. This is normal. In fact, you can see brown layers also inside the beef. Bright red color equals fresh meat, huh? Not necessarily. When the meat is first cut, it's maroon. If the meat is quickly vacuum packaged, it will keep that shade. But if the meat is exposed to air for like 15 minutes, then oxygen will cause a change in the look to red. The redness can turn brown when the biochemical reaction starts. This can take a few hours. Workers at the grocery stores grind the meat several times a day to achieve that bright red color, because they know consumers are cautious about maroon-looking beef. If the beef is wrapped in an oxygen-permeable plastic, it turns bright red after exposure to oxygen. As long as the meat smells and feels fresh, and if it's been stored properly, it should be safe to eat. Have you ever come across dark lines under a shrimp shell? This one has a similar story to beef. Black lines on your shrimp's flesh are related to a natural phenomenon. They gradually occur after shrimps are taken from the water. Meat is exposed to oxygen, and the blackness gets more visible over time. Here also, the pattern of the animal itself can be a factor. These black lines can be a naturally occurring discoloration on the shrimp. Think of cats. They also have different color patterns, but they're the same in terms of species. Next time, you can conduct a mini experiment in your kitchen. Put a couple of shrimps side by side and observe the mild differences in the shrimp's color patterns. Shrimp will have a distinct bad odor when it's no longer edible, so if it smells and tastes fresh, don't toss it. Should you eat moldy yogurt? That green substance on the surface doesn't look appealing at all. But if you scoop it out, you seem to have clean yogurt underneath. The short answer is toss it. The mold could be seen on the top only, but it has probably gone deep. Not to mention that it'll taste bad. Many molds are harmless, but some produce toxic substances. Green mold is a type of penicillium. Does this word sound familiar? That's the same type of mold used in the antibiotic penicillin. Don't get too excited. Eating moldy yogurt won't magically cure bacterial infections. It only spoils your dairy product. In 2013, there was an outbreak related to one line of yogurts. The company handed the products to stores as usual. After some time, they received customer complaints. They said that the yogurt looked like yogurt soup and tasted really old. Turns out that a type of fungus probably released some carbon dioxide. It made the product fizzy and bloating. Ugh. The company and another independent scientist both said that this fungus in question wasn't usually harmful to people. Yet, more than 200 people reported becoming affected by it. So, these sorts of things can still happen. You should trust your spidey sense. If you've ever been lucky enough to see some mold in a freshly opened package, reach out to the manufacturer. You'll potentially save others from facing the same scenery by notifying the company about a systemic issue and preventing potential future product waste. Plus, the company probably wants to make amends and either reimburse your sad yogurt with a happy one, or better, they'll give you coupons for free products. Why do avocados sometimes have brown dots inside? Technically, it's edible, but you might not want to eat it. Avocados are a source of many vitamins like C, E, K, and B6, as well as healthy stuff like magnesium, potassium, and more. The avocado works hard to become such a health storage. Nutrients, water, and sugars wander around this fruit. Yes, technically, avocado is classified as a fruit. Anyway, avocados have their own transport channels, like veins. These channels are normally invisible to us. Until something goes out of the ordinary, the avocado may be stored in too cold temperatures for a longer time than it should. As a result, the tissue cells might be weakened and start to deteriorate. Experts say that after the fruit is harvested, if it stays in the refrigerator for a few weeks before you buy it, vascular browning can occur. This phenomenon becomes visible after you keep the avocado at room temperature for a few days. Don't be hard on yourself, it's not because of you. So, should you eat it or toss it? You can eat the brown dotted avocados, but you may want to taste them first. They might not taste good compared to a regular one. What about the white area under the potato peel? Eat or toss? This area is also like dark bruise marks, but it's not black. If the outer layer of the potato looks normal, that odd-looking white knot is not mold. The moldy potatoes deteriorate. They'll get softer, wrinkled, or squishy. As long as the exterior of this potato appears clean and regular, there's probably no harmful microbial growth inside of it. These strikingly white areas can be shaped due to potatoes being bruised, possibly in the field during the harvesting period. To sum up, you can eat it. There's also an issue of white smears coming out when we slice potatoes. You see the marks on the cutting board? Experts say that some potatoes have a higher level of water and starch content. As a result, your cutting board gets a bit messier than usual. No need to worry about it. I'm gonna carry on with another form of potato. Not because I love every version of potato and I can eat it in all meals from breakfast to dinner, but because I want to know, what are those brown spots on potato chips? Should we eat or toss them? Consider these as minor imperfections. They don't affect the safety of the chip. They're there again because of the bruises they get or as a result of frying. Sometimes you see that your garlic is trying to make more garlic out of itself. Yep, it has sprouted. The question is it okay to eat sprouted cloves, or should you toss them? If the green sprout is in the center of the garlic clove, that's fine. Be aware that the taste of the garlic will be stronger than it usually is. It will still be perfectly okay in a cooked meal, since it'll be alongside other ingredients. The taste shouldn't be that harsh. Can we eat an apple with worms? Most people can't even stand the idea of accidentally eating an apple with a worm, but that's a cultural thing. So the answer is yes, we can eat it. After all, worms add a little protein to the fruit. These animals don't carry any harmful parasites. They make their way into the apple. The entrance point of the fruit might have an off flavor since it got sort of rotten in time. Besides the taste, the rotten part is all safe to bite. What might not be so safe is eating the fallen apples though. Those have probably been hanging out on the ground for quite some time. This period might be enough for the harmful bacteria from the soil to sneak into the apple. There were some cases where people experienced health issues by drinking unpasteurized apple juice made from dropped apples. Yeah, the ones that interact with unhealthy bacteria.
You've never ever eaten a single bite of a real cinnamon roll in your entire life. All your fancy Italian dinners with your friends were a scam. And get this, most likely, you've never tried a legit milkshake. Feels like your entire life is a lie, right? Don't worry, I've got you covered. I'll expose all those lies to you. Watch until the end to know how supermarkets sell you a fake Caesar salad and why the only authentic thing you've ever eaten was that seemingly packed with colorant red velvet cake. Do you like mashed peas? I don't. I still have those flashbacks to when my mom made me eat this swamp-like slurry when I was a kid. But I love peanut butter. Well, these two are related. The thing is, peanuts are actually legumes, not nuts. Why do they even call it peanut butter if it doesn't contain real nuts? And is not a dairy product to be considered butter? No one knows for sure, but I guess it's just because of the texture that resembles other nut-based spreadable pastes. The main component of the Caesar salad is probably its dressing. It has a bunch of ingredients, such as olive oil, eggs, lemon juice, Worcestershire sauce. By the way, 3 hardest things to say out there are I love you, I apologize, and Worcestershire sauce. Sorry, I got carried away. I was just saying that supermarket Caesar salad is a scam, since lots of stores and even restaurants throw in mayo and other unexpected ingredients. Source? Trust me, bro. Farm-raised salmon usually looks as white as the Twilight protagonist, but don't sparkle. It's the skin of the salmon, Bella. I'm a salmon. Ahem. Sorry, let's carry on. Well, people normally trust neither vampires nor pale salmon. To give the trustworthy reddish-pink look to those fish, sneaky fish farmers add pigmenting compounds to salmon feed, which helps mimic the color of wild salmon. In the wild, salmon get that iconic hue from shrimp and algae, but their farm-raised peers sometimes get a boost from carotenoids added to their feed. Many fancy pestos at supermarkets are labeled alla Genovese to show they come from Genoa and have old-school Italian nonna recipes. But sometimes, manufacturers may throw in a bit of extra stuff to make their pesto thicker. Okay, I may understand the extra sugar in this sauce, but bamboo fibers? I mean, I love pandas, but I'm not a panda. Some time ago, American journalists hit up 25 sushi spots in NYC and LA to see if we were really getting the sushi we paid for. They visited those big shot celeb hangouts and local joints and collected samples. Ordered sushi and then sent them off to a lab for some DNA testing. If that was a TV show, the results would sound like, "You are not the father." The thing is, 68% of the samples were not what they claimed to be. It was often a cheaper fish. In NYC, white tuna usually turned out to be escolar, also known as the X-lax fish, because instead of a nice aftertaste in your mouth, it can create a number 2 emergency. This fish is banned in Japan and Italy, but totally legal in the US. Things are even worse with wasabi. 95% of wasabi served in sushi restaurants is a knockoff. Yep, instead of fancy traditional Japanese stuff, you've been fed a cheap mix of horseradish, mustard flour, cornstarch, and green food coloring. Restaurants swear it's all about volatile compounds the real wasabi paste has that breaks down within minutes, but I have a bad feeling they just want to optimize costs as much as they can. If the apples you buy in supermarkets were kids, at the age they're sold, they'd be able to walk. While some produce like spinach is super fresh, apples often spend a long time in cold storage before hitting the shelves. In the US, apples are usually harvested between August and September. They're picked slightly unripe, treated with chemicals, yum, waxed, boxed, and then stored in cold warehouses for up to 12 months. In the US, the average supermarket apple is 14 months old, while in other countries, let's say Australia, they're slightly younger and are only around 10 months old. Red velvet cake color is all about chemistry. Cocoa powder has an antioxidant known as anthocyanin, which is sensitive to pH levels. It can react to both acids and bases. Buttermilk and vinegar, which are also part of the recipe, are acidic, so due to this simple reaction, the whole mixture gets a dark red hue. The resulting cake has more of a reddish-brown shade though, rather than bright red. The only problem is that it's difficult to replicate the natural reddish-brown color since most brands use an alkalizing agent to neutralize acidity during processing. And to get that color, cocoa powder must be raw. You see what I'm driving at, right? Those cakes you grab at your favorite coffee shop are packed with artificial food coloring. Stop calling these orange and yellow prepackaged slices cheese. Not only is it an insult to camembert, cheddar, and other cheese varieties, but it's also incorrect in terms of legal regulations. Even the FDA refuses to classify this product as real cheese. It contains less than 50% of actual cheese, with the remaining ingredients being fillers and additives. I guess those slices deserve their cheese product name. Many commercial blueberry products don't actually have any blueberries in them. Instead, they're full of sugar, corn syrup, and artificial flavors. Even big brands like Kellogg's and General Mills were guilty of that. But still, there are many real deals. Just make sure to check the ingredients list for the real blueberries, and remember, the best ingredient that can be put in a blueberry pie is your teeth. Let's normalize purple carrots, shall we? They used to be the norm. It wasn't until Dutch growers started some vegetable experiments that we ended up with the sweet orange carrots we all know today. The Dutch were on a mission to create a carrot that showcased their national colors, like orange for the House of Orange. Their carrot breeding efforts paid off, and soon the orange carrot was all the rage, pushing aside purple and yellow varieties. That canned pumpkin you grab every year isn't really pumpkin, or at least not always. Most of the time what you're getting is actually squash. The FDA doesn't care to differentiate between pumpkin and squash on food labels, so companies go for the tastier and more compact squash instead. The US has rules for grading and processing milk products to keep them safe to drink and prevent sickness. States can change the rules a bit, so you might see raw milk for sale in California, but never in Florida or Illinois. So, your favorite milkshake might not actually be a legal milkshake if it has too much or too little milk fat. Here's why McDonald's sells not milkshakes, but just shakes, as they're made of a soft-serve ice cream mix. There's this shocking truth about Dairy Queen. Despite serving the iconic Blizzard, they technically don't sell ice cream. The FDA's regulations require a certain amount of milk fat for a product to be classified as ice cream. Dairy Queen's soft serve falls short, only containing 5% butterfat, so they embrace the term soft serve for its frozen treats. Your cinnamon rolls are a lie. They don't have any real cinnamon in them. Many commercial cinnamon rolls use a less expensive variety of cinnamon called cassia, which is closely related to true cinnamon species. Portobello mushrooms are not a unique type of mushroom, but rather mature cremini mushrooms that have been allowed to grow bigger in size. So here, we've only got the age difference. The belief that churros are Mexican is yet another food misconception. The origin of churros is still a mystery, with varying claims as to who invented the popular pastry. While some believe it was Spanish shepherds, Portuguese sailors, or Chinese individuals, there is no definitive proof to confirm any group as the original inventors. Some truffle oils out there actually have real truffles in them, but most of those you see in stores use this synthetic stuff with a complicated name instead. It basically mimics the taste and smell of real truffles, so companies can make truffle oil without breaking the bank.
It's the first day of the apocalypse. The internet collapsed, logistics chains broke down. Outside your house, the world is living and breathing chaos. You need to think fast. You gotta make sure your provisions will last until who knows. First off, make sure to stockpile your share of pemmican. It's like a beef jerky with a lot of extra nutritional value. Pemmican is an invention of the indigenous people of North America. They depended on pemmican during harsh winters or when resources were scarce. It lasts long and it's easy to carry, the essence of survival food. It doesn't look the yummiest, but it can last up to 5 years if stored properly. This pemmican stuff is kind of perfect for the apocalypse, since it will give you a highly nutritional meal. A 2.2-ounce bar will give you around 300 calories, but here you get 3 for the serving of 1: dried meat, berries, and even sugar. And you won't have to eat a lot to feel satiated, since it gives your body an array of nutrients, from proteins to carbohydrates. I know you'll miss them, but don't grab those chocolate chip cookies you love. You need an alternative called ship's biscuits, but you can't find them in the supermarket. You gotta bake them yourself. These were literally the cookies that sailors ate during long voyages at sea. A ship's biscuit can go a lifetime without going bad. There are records of biscuits that lasted over 80 years. The deal is that when sailors went to sea, they didn't know exactly when they would set foot on land again, so they needed to be ready food-wise, or else they could, starve. Bakers came up with this simple recipe. These cookies are mostly made out of salt, flour, and a bit of water. But the secret here is that the slow baking method takes all the moisture out of it. The little holes on top help to get the moisture out during the cooking process. A medium-sized person can survive on 8 ship's biscuits a day. But there was a downside. These cookies were so dry that one might break their teeth while eating them. And extra attention is advised since there could be bugs hidden in the holes on top. So, before munching on those cookies, make sure to shake the pests out of them. Ever heard of a soup you can carry around? Well, portable soup is an ancient secret that needs to make this list. Portable soup is hard and condensed. It's a type of solidified broth, like a bouillon, made essentially of meat. You need to cook it slowly, with any type of meat high on collagen. While cooking the meat, it will release its taste in the water in the pot. After about 18 to 24 hours of reduction, you'll get a gelatin-like nutritional substance. When this cools down, it turns into a plaque that you can cut down into smaller tablets. To eat it, You just need to find some hot water and put the meat tablet inside of it. It would release all the condensed nutrients in it, giving you a warm, hearty, and highly nutritional meal. If you attempt to risk your life and go outside to buy provisions, don't forget white rice. This variety of rice can maintain its nutrient content and flavor for up to 30 years. White rice is better than other varieties, such as brown rice, because of their natural oils. Now, let's say it's been a year into the apocalypse. You've gotten used to your new lifestyle at this point. You go outside to hunt for some fresh meat, but you run into a bear. But since your nutrition is up to date, you have all the energy you need to escape it, and you can thank kamut for that. This ancient grain contains up to 40% more protein than modern wheat, and it's richer in zinc, magnesium, selenium, and healthy fatty acids. It's not called high-energy grain for a random reason. It's easy to digest and provides more energy than regular wheat. Quick thought here. While we're speaking about survival food, we're not just thinking about things to fill your stomach. We need to think in nutritional terms as well as psychological ones, which means Jell-O. It may sound superficial, but don't underestimate the need for comfort food during the end of the world. Since it's made out of an industrialized powder, it lasts for a pretty long time. Plus, it's a source of collagen. This will help your bones to remain sturdy. Make sure your pantry has salt and sugar. Salt has been used since humans discovered it helps to preserve the shelf life of meat and stuff. That's why Egyptians used it in their mummification processes, so it would slow down the decaying process. Now, sugar can be stored for an indefinite period of time. Make sure to get a top-quality refined sugar, though, and store it somewhere without any type of strong smell, since it absorbs the scents around it. Both sugar and salt keep bacteria and mold from growing. Now keep in mind, moisture is one of your number one enemies in the apocalypse, even worse than zombies perhaps, simply because moisture allows for bacteria and mold to prosper, and these guys end up eating all your food. 2 years into this whole chaos, you figured out your way around food. When it all started, you bought a bunch of fresh veggies and dehydrated them. By dehydrating food, you still get all the nutrients, but they last for much longer. Plus, they reduce in size quite significantly, which makes storing them much easier. You didn't forget about peanut butter, of course. Peanut butter is highly caloric, plus they are your best treat at this point. Now I know what you're thinking, I can go without candies, but how will I survive without milk? Well, you don't have to. Instead of regular milk, make sure you get tons of powdered milk. You can even vary a bit and buy powdered coconut or even almond milk. To prepare them, you just need to mix it with a bit of water. And of course, coffee is a big survival food. It lasts a long time, although it won't bring you much nutrition. Coffee does have its share of antioxidants, which will help with a longer life. Plus, it helps with your brain's health, preventing dementia. You should get your share of canned food, beans, vegetables, even fish. Make sure you get some black beans, as they're high in iron. You need to have a sturdy immune system, since there won't be many doctors around, or they've turned into zombies. Canned pink salmon is a must-have in your apocalypse pantry. It's got a bunch of those omega-3 fatty acids, which will help with your brain and your heart health. It can last up to 6 years if stored correctly. And you gotta think about oats here. Oats are one of the world's healthiest foods. A bowl of oatmeal for breakfast can help you feel full longer, which is a great ally when food is being rationed. Rolled oats are simple to make and can be eaten without cooking, simply by letting them sit in water overnight. Now, corn. Flint corn is one of the best for long-term storage. It makes a pretty good cornmeal. You can even grind it and make a mean tortilla, in case you start to miss those Mexican night outs. It's best to store it whole and grind it only when you cook it, for durability, of course. Now, unfortunately, popcorn has more moisture than other varieties of corn and is not the best candidate for long-term storage. Let's just say popcorn doesn't make it into the apocalypse. Which leads us to another point. None of this will work if you don't know how to store your survival food. You need to create a storage location that is cool, dark, and dry. This can extend the shelf life of your food for up to 30 years. For the dehydrated stuff, you need to store it in airtight containers. Air is kind of a bad guy here, since it helps to oxidize a bunch of stuff. Most bacteria in our food need air in order to thrive. So if we cut out the air, this means more food for us.
You decide to try a new coffee brand that has a nice golden packing and proudly says 100% coffee on it. But it tastes nothing like your favorite drink. Don't blame yourself for being the worst barista on the planet. The substance you just purchased might just not be the real thing at all. It's so expensive because of how it's made. Coffee plants can't be hurried to grow. Depending on the type of coffee, it takes a coffee tree about 3 to 5 years to start bearing fruit. Coffee farming is a people-powered industry, from planting to processing. Coffee farms are often huge, so you need many workers to plant all those new trees. And it takes about 2,000 hand-picked Arabica coffee cherries to make a single roasted pound of coffee. If you want to get the best out of the variety of options, don't fall for labels saying 100% pure coffee. If it doesn't say 100% Arabica, they must have mixed in cheaper Robusta beans, which can make your coffee taste bitter. Check the roasted on date for freshness, not the best by date. When a brand offers a gazillion artificial flavors, it's a sign they're not confident in their beans' quality. A good roaster might have a few unique flavors, but not a whole buffet.
In Japan, you'll find wasabi all over the place, but chances are, if you've tried it outside of that country, you've had a fake. True wasabi doesn't come from your regular horseradish plant. It's more like a root vegetable made from the underground stem of the wasabi plant. This stem is grated to make the real wasabi paste. Growing wasabi plants isn't easy as they only like clear, running stream beds in Japan's mountain river valleys. That's why the real thing is so pricey. Fake wasabi is usually a mix of regular European horseradish disguised as the real deal. You'll find it in squeezable tubes, little packets, or as a powder you mix with water. These products often contain just a tiny bit of the real stuff, usually 1 to 3%. It helps cut costs a lot. If you want to check if you've got real wasabi, check the texture. If it's super smooth and pasty, you're likely dealing with pureed horseradish. But if it's got a gritty feel, like it was freshly grated, it's more likely the real deal. Authentic wasabi is always served fresh because its flavor and zinginess vanish quickly once it's grated. The only Parmesan that you can really call this way gotta come from the Emilia-Romagna region in Italy, especially Parma, or a certain part of Lombardy. There are only about 300 certified dairies in that area that can make genuine Parmigiano Reggiano. And they've got to age it for at least a year to get those super important umami flavor crystals going. Some of it ages for up to 100 months or longer. The authentic Parmesan wheels are marked with a DOP stamp, Denominazione di Origine Protetta, basically saying it's the real deal from the right place. Italian Parmesan is easy to find in most stores, but there are other options that can be cheaper. That's because American-made Parmesan only needs to be aged for 10 months, and some grated blends can have up to 4% fillers, like rice flour or wood pulp cellulose. The legit Parmigiano Reggiano cheese only has 3 ingredients, and one of them is milk from cows raised in the same region. Plus, they've got some strict rules about what those cows can't eat, like fermented grain. Maple syrup fans, this one's for you. Did you know that to produce your favorite pancake topping, artisans have to tap maple trees that can grow more than 5 stories tall, extract sap, and then boil it down? It's an age-old craft, passed down through generations, from indigenous peoples to modern-day syrup makers. But many of the bottles with sticky sweet syrup inside have nothing to do with that process. Pancake syrup, or table syrup, is a mix of corn syrup, caramel coloring, and flavoring. If you see these ingredients on the label, it's a telltale sign you aren't dealing with the real maple syrup. The consistency of your purchase is another giveaway. The authentic maple syrup is runny. That's why you can pour it easily. Pancake syrup is thicker and stickier. The price can't always give away a fake in this case. It can be affordable even for the real product. Another item that often gets counterfeited is designer bags. To make sure you're buying the real thing, give that purse a good feel. If it's supposed to be leather, it better feel and smell like it. Counterfeiters often skimp on quality materials. Check out the zippers, buttons, or any metal parts. They should feel solid, not lightweight or cheap. And of course, no chipping allowed. Look closely at the seams. Sloppy or uneven stitching is a big red flag. The inner lining is another giveaway. Feel it and make sure it matches the brand's quality. Pay attention to the brand logo. Authentic ones are all about the details. The same goes for the label inside the bag. Get familiar with how it should look so you can spot any slip-ups. Check the number and placement of pockets. Each model has its own design. If it doesn't match up, something's fishy. Shady dealings with extra virgin olive oil date back to ancient Rome. Back then, tricksters would sell low-quality oil or mixes under the fancy Evo label. Nowadays, most legit extra virgin olive oil comes from Spain, Italy, or Greece. They produce it by squishing ripe olives without heating or chemicals. Good Evo might cost you around $10 for a 17-ounce bottle. Fraudsters have gone undercover amidst real producers, making it tough to spot the fakes. But you have more chances of finding the real thing if you avoid blend or light varieties on the label. Check the pressed-on date. It should be less than a year old since the oil loses its fruity vibe after a couple of years. If there's a harvest date and details like the producer's name or olive type, it's likely legit. Some high-quality oils note the free fatty acidity, FFA, level, which is a good sign. Don't automatically trust fancy packaging or high prices. Even an expensive bottle can be past its use-by date. If you like to cook, cinnamon, mint, nutmeg, sage, and other spices must always be in your kitchen cabinet. But you can't be sure you've got the real thing unless you're prepared to pay a hefty price for them. When you break it down by the pound, some of them, like vanilla and saffron, are as pricey as precious metals like silver and gold. And where there's value, there's a dark underbelly of fraud. This multi-billion-dollar industry is a playground for tricksters looking to make a quick buck. If you don't want to add something fake to your meals, the best you can do is buy the spices whole and grind them yourself. If possible, try to find a retailer that sells spices in bulk. You'll be able to see them yourself, and you won't miss the aroma of real cinnamon or oregano. If you're planning to buy a designer watch, look closely for any blunders or defects on the watch. Designer watches are usually made with high-quality standards, so things like chipped paint, scratches, or spelling errors are rare. Also, check if the clasp works and if the watch keeps accurate time. Genuine designer watches have precise, clear engraving created by skilled watchmakers. If the lettering looks messy or hard to read, chances are it's a fake. Designer watches are made with valuable metals and intricate parts, so they should feel a bit heavier than they look. If a watch feels surprisingly light, it might be fake. Real luxurious watches have unique serial numbers that should be precisely laser-etched, not sloppily printed. Make sure these numbers match the case and warranty numbers. Simply search online or contact the manufacturer's customer service to confirm you've got the real thing.
Bet you've never heard of corrugation. It's a system that may lie hidden in your pantry right now. Ever notice those bumps on food cans? That's exactly what they're called. And they're not just for aesthetics. First off, they make the can extra strong. That's because they can help it from cracking during the manufacturing process. Plus, these corrugations come in handy during delivery, acting like a shield to make sure there's no spillage.
They're also useful in the long run because they help keep the cans in their original shape. Even when things get too hot or too cold, these corrugations let them breathe a bit. They expand and contract without breaking the metal. You may not notice any cracks on regular cans, but even the tiniest of openings can leave a way for nasty bacteria to get in contact with the food. Not to mention, they create this little air gap, so when you pop the can open, everything slides out smoothly, without you having to put in that much effort. You know what also doesn't require much effort? Hitting that subscribe button and liking this video. You know there's a plant out there that's so eager to reach the sun, you can hear it grow? Rhubarb, just before it's picked from the fields, soaks up all the sun rays it can get to make glucose. After this sunbathing session, it gets transported to dark sheds. Inside, it keeps on growing and uses the stored glucose as fuel. Nothing out of the ordinary so far, but in that dark, cozy, and warm place, rhubarb starts acting weird. That environment pushes the plant to stretch itself out in hopes it will find sun rays again. It happens so fast that you can actually hear the buds and stalks making noise as they pop open. To make sure this process goes smoothly, there's no light allowed. If light hits the rhubarb at this point, it will start photosynthesizing again and go bitter. Speaking of everyday groceries, you might have noticed that veggie bags come with some green stripes. Know that it's a sneaky optical trick. Those stripes fool our eyes into believing the veggies look way greener than they are. And it's not just veggies that get this special packaging. Oranges are often sold in red mesh bags for the same reason. Lemons? They go for yellow or green bags for that same pop of color. If your cooking skills aren't that good and you're just afraid you're going to mess up dinner yet again, stick to mushrooms. That's because they're almost impossible to overcook. Unlike other vegetables that turn into mush when overcooked, mushrooms are way more resistant. They've got this interesting substance called chitin, a molecular structure that works like an armor. So you can cook them forever. They won't burn. Donuts don't have holes in them because it's easier for you to pick them up. If you've ever tried to make them at home, you might have noticed that when you fry the dough, the outside gets done quickly, thanks to the hot oil. If you want the inside to look just as good, you have to keep it in the oil way longer, but then the outside would get too brown. Thanks to that middle hole, the heat gets to both sides equally, cooking up a flawless donut. Here's how that small piece of paper makes it into your fortune cookie. First, they bake these cookies flat, like pancakes. Then, while they're still warm and bendy, they sneak in those tiny messages. As the cookies cool down, they toughen up and keep their shape, trapping the fortune inside like a tasty time capsule. One legend has it that these Asian treats were initially intended to help people send all sorts of secret messages without causing any suspicion. Here's a little tip for whenever you're buying lunch at a fast food place. Skip the word extra when you're ordering. The moment you speak that term, you're tempting the employees to charge more. Instead, go for something like, "A little more, please," when you're getting a special burrito bowl. According to a UK study, cheese is the most stolen of foods worldwide. It's estimated that around 4% of all cheese just vanishes from stores. And no, it's not mice doing the stealing, it's people. Why? Because cheese is becoming more and more valuable. The price of cheese is constantly going up, and sneaky thieves are trying to make easy money by simply taking it from the racks. It's not just cheese, though. Other interesting items on the thieving list include fresh meat, chocolate, and seafood. Ferrero, the company behind those luscious jars of Nutella, needs about 25% of the world's hazelnuts every year. So if you think about it, 1 in 4 hazelnuts ends up in a chocolatey jar. The manufacturers get the nuts from Turkey, Italy, and Chile, making sure they get them delivered from both the northern and southern hemispheres to keep things fresh. Nutella's impact on the economy is even bigger than you'd imagine. Because of this demand, the price of hazelnuts went through the roof. In 2014, a frost hit Turkey's hazelnuts, supply got halved, and prices were even higher. Now, even places like New Jersey are trying to grow those Nutella-worthy nuts. When you imagine someone trying to sneak something into space, your first thought wouldn't be a sandwich. But back in 1965, during a Gemini mission, astronaut John Young brought a corned beef sandwich on board, going against NASA rules. He hid it in his spacesuit pocket before blastoff. About 2 hours into the 5-hour trip, he went to the mission commander and offered him this unlawful treat. The commander, being a good sport, took it, and they shared a quick, savory moment. He even put the unfinished sandwich in his own spacesuit pocket to avoid crumbs making a mess of the spacecraft. Meanwhile, the official NASA-approved food was waiting patiently in a box nearby. Surely, radishes aren't your first pick when it comes to salad ingredients, but they have quite an interesting history too. These mustard, broccoli, cabbage, and cauliflower cousins have been grown and eaten for longer than you'd imagine, even before the Romans were famous in ancient Egyptian times. In fact, radishes were used as currency for the people who built the pyramids, alongside onions and garlic. You'd think the English are champions when it comes to drinking tea, but you'd be wrong. Turkey is in fact the tea capital of the world. Every Turk drinks an average of 1,300 cups of tea each year. On a regular day, they're sipping on 3 to 5 cups, but when winter hits, they can reach 10 cups a day. Locals claim tea is like a social custom for them. It's more than just a hot beverage. It's an excuse to sit down, enjoy the atmosphere, and connect with loved ones. When it comes to types, black tea is preferred. There might be a magical drink hidden in your fridge. It's tonic water, and it might be able to glow in the dark. If you're curious, test it out with some ultraviolet light. The secret behind this glow is pretty simple. Tonic water has quinine, a chemical that lights up under certain conditions. Quinine was used back in the day to treat certain health problems. The stuff was so bitter that some people started mixing it with sugar and soda water. In simple terms, things glow because they absorb light energy, gets all excited, and then releases it as visible light. Quinine in tonic water absorbs and releases energy, making your drink look like it's from a fairy tale. There's an interesting connection between what we hear and what we taste. Scientists investigated and found that people worldwide link certain sounds with specific flavors, and they call it cross-modal correspondence. High-pitched sounds match up with sweet and sour tastes, while the lower, jarring sounds go hand in hand with bitterness. If it's staccato, think crunchy, and if it's smooth and flowing, think creamy. Some even found music that can enhance the taste of chocolate. In this study, when people listened to a high-pitched, sweet soundtrack while eating chocolate, they thought it was sweeter than when they'd heard a lower, more dissonant soundtrack. Venice banned new kebab shops and other fast food outlets in an attempt to maintain the city's decorum and traditions. It happened several years ago when the authorities passed a law to limit the opening of these types of restaurants, with only artisanal ice cream shops being exempt from the ban. The city's tourism chief explained that the goal is to preserve Venice's cultural heritage and promote local products. The concern is that fast food establishments could detract from the city's unique identity and harm the environment. Venice is not the only Italian city taking action against fast food. Verona and Florence have also implemented restrictions on new kebab shops and foreign food establishments. In 2012, London restaurants were in an uproar after the ban on rare and medium-rare burgers had been announced by the Westminster City Council. They claimed it was for health reasons, but some were skeptical. One chef even said that if they stuck to these rules, they might as well kiss the burger industry goodbye.
Others worry it's just the beginning, and soon we won't be able to enjoy runny eggs or steak tartare either. Raw and undercooked meat can indeed be dangerous, but many believe the authorities are overreacting. However, with previous incidents like the mad cow disease outbreak in mind, it's clear the council is just trying to be cautious. By the way, in New Zealand, you can't order your burger rare either, all because of some pesky bacteria concerns. Pufferfish is a Japanese delicacy that only the bravest dare to try. Their highly poisonous internal organs, for instance, the liver, contains tetrodotoxin, which is extremely toxic. This poison can enter your body in multiple ways: through a cut on your skin, when you inhale it, and, of course, if you eat it. Normally, people can't stay alive if they eat this fish. Yet, Japanese chefs are trained to remove the poisonous parts from a delicacy with a hefty price tag named fugu. It's almost completely banned in the US. There are only a few authorized places that sell it, and in order to do so, they need to have a special license. Just so you know, it's not only pufferfish that has this poison. Most octopi and cuttlefish have it too. Casu marzu, known as rotten cheese in Italian, is unsurprisingly banned in the US. But hey, if you're feeling adventurous and want to give it a try, head to Sardinia, Italy. This cheese is made from sheep's milk and has a little twist. Special flies lay eggs in it. Ugh! Maggots have around 40 days to invade the cheese, and then it's left for 2 to 3 months with maggots in it. The live maggots in the cheese help decompose it, giving it a unique texture and spicy flavor. It may be banned in the US, but it's definitely worth a try if you're ever in Italy. You may think there's everything a person may want in the US, but then, bam! One day you wake up craving some haggis, and it turns out this tender dish is legally banned in the land of liberty. The reason behind it isn't because Americans prefer mac and cheese or burgers, but because some ingredients haggis has aren't considered to be safe in the US, namely sheep lungs. And they make 15% of this dish. In fact, there's a full range of sheep's inner parts, plus some oatmeal, a lot of minced onions, suet, and some broth. It's quite crumbly and coarse, and it's also spicy. If the description didn't make you change your mind, get ready for a transcontinental flight and see you in Edinburgh. Sadly, haggis isn't the only Scottish dish banned somewhere in the world. Black pudding and other similar dishes from around the world are banned in the US due to sanitary reasons. However, if someone tells you that people in Canada went even further and banned iron brew and Marmite, don't believe them. Canadian authorities stated otherwise several years ago. Sorry folks, but there simply ain't enough room in Sweden for both M&M's and Marabou chocolates to coexist peacefully. It's like a Wild West showdown between these colorful candies marked with the letter M. So, who won the trademark battle? Marabou chocolates, of course. They've been holding the fort since the 1950s, while M&M's only rode into town in 2009. In a twist of fate, a Swedish court laid down the law in 2016 and ruled that Mars couldn't sell M&M's with lowercase m letters on the packaging. So if you're craving some peanut M&M's in Sweden, you'll have to settle for the version with capital M's on the packaging. The World Health Organization recently gave out validation certificates to Denmark, Lithuania, Poland, Saudi Arabia, and Thailand for eliminating trans fats from their foods. Trans fats are bad for our health and pretty easy to get rid of, making it a simple yet important nutrition policy for countries to follow. WHO now has a cool new program where they give out certificates to countries that kick trans fats to the curb. Kind of like how they do for getting rid of diseases like polio and smallpox. Horse meat is banned in many states in the US, first and foremost, for ethical reasons. It's considered cruel to eat horse meat there. However, some people also think there are safety reasons to avoid this type of meat. The thing is, horse meat is not particularly good for health due to various toxins found in it. Americans sure do love their salmon. But do you know that the farm-raised salmon in the US gets its coral color from being fed a carotenoid called synthetic astaxanthin? Yikes! This chemical is actually banned from consumption in some countries, such as Australia and New Zealand. And how about milk we all drink? Unless it's specifically marked, it's treated with artificial hormones to boost milk production. The FDA says there's no difference in the milk, but countries like Canada and the European Union ban it. Who knew? Chicken in the US gets washed in chlorine to reduce the risk of spreading illnesses like salmonella. Sounds good, right? Well, the UK and Europe think differently and banned this practice due to some unsanitary farming concerns. And let's not forget about the pork industry using ractopamine to beef up their livestock. While this is common in the US, over 160 other countries have banned this drug in meat production. Quite the difference in opinion, huh? The next time you're munching on those yummy Swiss rolls, keep in mind that the food dyes yellow 5 and red 40 in them are considered problematic in Europe and have warnings for kids. You got it, they're banned in at least 2 European countries, Austria and Norway. The rest of the countries require a special label on the packaging. Many break-based products in the US, like croissant, French toast sticks, and pre-sliced breakfast use azodicarbonamide as a whitening agent. Europe says no to this chemical, but the FDA still allows it. It's like a foodie drama unfolding before our eyes. When enjoying rainbow-colored candy, consumers are not only experiencing the array of flavors, but they're also consuming food dyes such as yellow 5, yellow 6, and red 40. These dyes have been linked to negative effects, so, yet again, Europe requires special labels on the packaging because those dyes may have an adverse effect on activity and attention in kids. In countries like Norway and Austria, the dye called yellow 5 is completely banned from use. In 1996, the FDA approved Olestra as a fat substitute for use in snacks and chips in order to provide guilt-free snacking options. Despite this approval, Olestra has been associated with side effects such as abdominal cramping and loose stools, as well as inhibiting the absorption of important vitamins and nutrients. As a result, the additive has been banned in Canada and several European countries. Next time you grab snacks to eat in front of your favorite series, make sure to look out for Olestra. Trans fats such as partially hydrogenated soybean and cottonseed oils can even be found in your favorite coffee creamer. Yep, coffee's at risk too. Those have been associated with heart conditions. Even though those fats were officially prohibited in the United States in 2018, they continue to be present in the American food supply. In addition to the US, several other countries have also set a strict limit on trans fats, including Switzerland, Austria, Hungary, Iceland, Norway, and Denmark.
Now, up for a guessing game? It's going to be pretty simple. I'll be giving you the name of some food, and you must guess what it is. This might seem easy, but the farther you get, the tougher the questions are. So, let's start. The first food on our list is Cheetos. So, what are they? If your answer was chips, sorry, but you're wrong. The right answer is puffs, and it's explained by the method they use to make Cheetos. They're made of corn, and they have their signature shape thanks to an extruder that shapes them. The main difference between chips and puffs is that chips are fried and puffs, like Cheetos, can be processed in several ways. For example, they can be baked. Next, we have a dish called Welsh Rabbit. All I can say now is that it's super yummy. Can you guess what the Welsh Rabbit is? The name is pretty misleading, I know that. But in reality, a Welsh Rabbit has nothing to do with rabbit. It's actually an 18th century recipe with hot melted cheese generously poured over toast. Told you it's delish. Now, lion's head. Yep, that's a dish, and we already know that the name is quite misleading. So, any ideas? This is pretty simple. A dish called a lion head is just a meatball. It's a traditional Chinese dish, and it has many alterations. Hey, if you can add up some broccoli on your plate, it might even look like a mane, and the meatball can resemble the head. But you have to have quite a poetic mind for that. Now let's imagine you're having dinner at a posh restaurant, and you see sweetbreads on the menu. You don't want to seem ignorant and ask the waiter about the dish, so you have to make a decision yourself. Can you guess what it is, and would you grab it? To grab or not to grab? That is the question. Sure thing, tastes differ, but if you expect to have a cake or a fancy muffin when you order sweetbreads, you're going to be terribly disappointed. Thing is, sweetbreads are the thymus gland of animals. Good news, you're not very likely to get into such a situation in a restaurant, as sweetbreads aren't common today. Now another thing that may sound fancy, but is not fancy at all, prairie oysters. I believe you've already guessed these are not oysters. Any ideas about what it really is? Okie dokie, here's the recipe for prairie oysters. All you need is a raw egg, some Worcestershire sauce, and hot sauce. And if you want to spice it up a little bit, just add some vinegar and a bit of tomato juice. Now, there's another version which uses the part that turns a bull into a steer, and I'll leave it right there. All right, this name is truly poetic. You need to use your imagination to guess what it is. So, ants climbing a tree. What kind of dish could it be? No ants are involved here. Actually, it looks very much like pasta bolognese, but it's a Chinese dish, Szechuan to be more precise. It's made of ground meat that represents ants and bean noodles that represent trees. It's pretty hot as there is chili paste. There's no info about what exactly chili paste represents, but I guess it might represent a hot summer day. Next, we have a dish called bubble and squeak. This one seems pretty simple though. Just think about it. What can squeak when we cook it? So, some foods do squeak when we put them over the heat. Bubble and squeak is a hash, and you can cook it with different leftover veggies you've got in your fridge. They say it's the cabbage that gives that signature squealing sound, but it's not the only ingredient for sure. It's commonly made with potatoes, onions, and yeah, cabbage. But you can play with the recipe a bit. Now, what about a dish called hen of the woods? Any ideas? Nope, these are not chicken wings. It has nothing to do with hens or chicks, actually. It's a mushroom, and it has plenty of names, too. You can call it a ram's head, a sheep's head, a dancing mushroom, and even a monkey's bench. These mushrooms can be consumed fried, but traditionally they're considered to be medicinal mushrooms. They're usually about the size of a potato, but sometimes they can grow up to 100 pounds. So big, in fact, that there's not much room left. Okay, sorry. Congrats, you've made it through 50% of the questions. Next up is the parson's nose. Yeah, it's tough, so I'll give you some hints here. Pick one of the options. It's a dish made of veggies, it's a dish made of chicken, it's a cake. Time's up. Hen of the woods may not be made of chicken, but parson's nose definitely has some chicken in it. Technically, it's a chicken's behind. Look right here, this little triangular thing. Some chefs don't like leaving this part on the chicken before roasting it, but others believe it's quite good. Thing is, the flavor of that part is pretty rich because of the oils the birds produce. Now, it's getting even harder. So, what do you think cat's tongues are? This one is pretty popular around the world. I mean, who doesn't like cookies? Right. Cat's tongues are the cookies that are popular in France, the Netherlands, and even the Philippines. There are different techniques of how to achieve this specific shape. Some chefs use pastry bags, and others prefer molds. The cookies are delicate and sweet, and sometimes have a buttercream filling. They can also be served with ice cream and even dipped in chocolate. Ooh, yumbo! Egg hoppers is the next misleading name we have on the list. So, what's your guess? Egg hoppers may sound a bit like grasshoppers, but sure thing, this dish cannot jump. This dish looks very similar to an average French crepe, but the ingredients are pretty different. Instead of wheat flour, they use rice flour, and regular milk is replaced with coconut milk. Not hard to guess, it's a dish that you can find in some parts of Southeast Asia and in India. Now we know that egg hoppers don't relate to grasshoppers, but what about a grasshopper pie? Now, even though bugs can be cooked in some countries and they can be part of a national cuisine, a grasshopper pie is 100% bug-free. It's made with graham cracker crumbs, cream de mint, cream de cacao, and some heavy cream, so it has an exotic name because of its color, and it's delicious. Next, we have a dish with quite a particular name. It's called the Priest Fainted. I'm going to help you a little bit with this one. It's made with veggies, so all you need to do is guess what veggie you need to cook this dish. The main ingredient here is an eggplant. Also, there should be some tomatoes and a lot of olive oil. The flavor of this dish is super intense. Eskimo ice cream. Does this sound sweet to you? Well, sorry to break it to you, but you won't find this one in an ice cream parlor. Yeah, it has some berries in it, but it also has some reindeer fat, seal oil, and even some ground fish. They say the texture is nice and pretty creamy, but it still doesn't sound like a dessert. Next up, egg cream. You might have already guessed that it has neither eggs nor cream. What could it be? First off, it's a drink. It's made of some milk, fizzy water, and any syrup to your liking. Typically, they use chocolate or vanilla syrup. It's mostly a fountain drink. Some entrepreneurs tried to bottle it, but to keep it as refreshing as it should be, the ingredients should be mixed right before you drink it. The last but not the least, the final thing to be guessed here is Bombay duck. So, what do you think it is? For some unknown reason, it's fish. Lizard fish, to be more specific. In Sri Lanka, people dry it first and then consume it. Otherwise, they temper it, fry it, or can even cook it as a curry. Well, that's it for today. Share the most deceptively named foods you know in the comments.
Number 1. Bananas. These guys changed a lot over time. Their seeds were tougher and their skin didn't look the same, but the main difference is, of course, the taste. Bananas taste different because of their genes. This is Cavendish bananas, aka bananas from the supermarket we all eat, are at great risk. A couple of years ago, they made up 95% of all banana exports, but they're inevitably disappearing because of the fungi infections spread over the plantations. So, people will have to cultivate a new banana type that will probably appear bland in comparison with the ones we're used to. Do you like corn? A big lump with knobs. It has the juice. Right, but the original before selective breeding corn wasn't big nor juicy. It used to be a mere grass called teosinte, and its kernels weren't big enough to feed even a kitten, not to mention an adult human. And it wasn't that edible either. It had a hard shell, so the kernels weren't easy to reach unless you had a heavy hammer to hit it a couple of times to open the shell. Luckily, some smart people started choosing the desired teosinte plants with the largest kernels. Unlike its ancestor, modern corn contains 4 times more sugar and doesn't taste like raw potato. Fancy mac and cheese? In 2016, a large manufacturer, Kraft, admitted they had changed the original recipe. No one actually noticed much difference, but the changes were for the better. All they did was replace artificial colorings with natural spices. This way, they added paprika and turmeric. I love avocado toast, but they would have been much different and way less creamy and delicate, but for, you guessed it right, selective breeding. It all started with wild avocados. Those guys were small, only about 3 inches wide, and that would have been okay, but the size of the stone was impressive. Not to mince words, there was almost no flesh. Roughly, one of today's supermarket avocados equals 10 wild avocados. And actually, grabbing 10 avocados for one toast is not the biggest problem. Wild avocado skin is far too tough to be cut, so you'd need a machete to make a toast. This one is not about taste, this one is about size. And when it comes to chocolate, size does matter. Sadly, in the early 2010s, the Snickers bar was reduced for the first time in over 80 years. Snickers lost about 11% of its original size, which equals 30 calories. For the rest, it's still the same old Snickers we all love. McDonald's food tastes pretty much the same wherever you grab it, but not whenever you grab it. In 1990, McDonald's switched to pure vegetable oil. But if you could travel back in time, you might have tried old-style McDonald's fries cooked in a blend of 93% beef tallow and 7% cottonseed oil. The classic Oreo cookie has had several alterations too. In the 1990s, they removed the lard and started using trans fats instead. About 10 years later, those trans fats were replaced by vegetable oil. Fun Oreo fact: double-stuffed Oreo cookies aren't double-stuffed in fact. A math teacher, Dan Anderson, assigned a cool task to his students. They weighed 10 regular Oreos, 10 double-stuffed Oreos, 10 mega-stuffed Oreos, and 5 wafers. Turns out, double-stuffed Oreos are only 1.86 stuffed Oreos. I love the soft marshmallow texture. Still, back in the day, they were even easier to chew. What we have today as marshmallows are the squishy gelatin pillows, right? Old-style ones were more like syrup. That syrup was extracted from the roots of the marshmallow plant and mixed with different toppings. I know you don't believe such a plant exists. It's something I'm not sure how to pronounce, but you can read it. Here's the picture. Time to get shocked. Number 1. Nope, apple pie isn't originally American. It's among the earliest recipes recorded in Britain. Number 2. Some apple pie recipes featured meat, fish, and bird. Sounds weird and even a bit gross. Okay, let me tell you a bit more about a normal apple pie recipe from 1380. All you need are apples, dates, prunes, pears, raisins, something similar to cinnamon, mace, cloves, sugar, sandalwood, and unicorn tears. Just kidding. Cinnamon wasn't very popular back then. Sugar was pricey. So to sweeten it all up, people loved to use grains of paradise, better known as pepper. And there was no edible crust. That idea came to people sometime later. Selective breeding. Here we go again. Around 4000 BC, peaches looked more like cherries until the Chinese domesticated them. Here's the old-time peach skin. Waxy on the outside, slightly over 60% of flesh is edible, and a huge stone. In 2022, there's no one around who tried the original cherry-like peaches, but scientists claim the taste was dramatically different, salty, and even similar to lentils. With time, the peach evolved into a sweet, soft-skinned fruit with a relatively small stone. Eggplants. Today there's only one shape this veggie may have, but it used to come in a variety of shapes. Even the name derives from the fact that they were white and round. However, they didn't limit to one color only. They could also be blue and yellow. The great changes started when this veggie was domesticated in China, Thailand, and India. It's pretty clear the taste was different too. They say it used to be bitter and was used for medicinal purposes only. Ugh, I'm not really into eggplants today. I bet those of the past wouldn't be to my liking either. Hey, not all the changes are for the better. Sadly, we'll never try the original strawberry, but the studies claim that it tasted much sweeter before cultivation. The thing is, when performing selective breeding, farmers paid attention to the size, as the original wild strawberries were tiny and resistant to outer conditions. The shape of strawberries we know now is due to the mixing of two breeds, the original wild strawberry and the Chilean strawberry that was once brought to France. Let's travel to 10th century Persia. If you're a fan of carrots, don't even try to look for orange ones. They were originally white and purple. The flavor was much stronger and they looked different too. Those original ones were much thinner. Some centuries later, the carrot seeds were sent to Europe and selectively bred. As a result, we have orange and way less bitter carrots now. Fun fact, baby carrots aren't a different species. These are the same carrots, but trimmed and sized down. Okay, this one looks a bit like a cactus. Seems weird and totally not edible, right? Well, it's the ancestor of a cucumber. This guy has changed a lot over time. You see those spikes? Some of today's cucumbers got rid of them completely and can boast a silky smooth skin, while others still do have that spiky resemblance to their ancestor. Also, the old version cucumber had only 4 seeds inside, unlike its modern counterpart. Anyway, the main difference between them is that you don't want to slice some of the old-time cucumbers in your salad. It was toxic and non-edible. Things with tomatoes are a bit more complicated, as their evolution happened in 2 stages. It all started with the wild ancestors that were as tiny as berries and had different colors like yellow, purple, and green. The wild ancestors evolved into yellow tomatoes, which evolved into something we know today as cherry tomatoes. Hey, have you noticed that the tomatoes get less flavorful each year? It's because they lost some of their genes over time. That's the downside of selective breeding. The second stage started when people cultivated cherry tomatoes into those large ones we need to make a perfect burger and ketchup. By the way, 200 years ago, ketchup was used as medicine. Doctors used to believe tomatoes had a lot of medicinal properties, and so did ketchup. Did someone say ketchup? I guess this is the leader on the list. This condiment has nothing in common with the original version. First off, it was tomato-free. Second, it was made from fish entrails, meat byproducts, and soybeans. Third, it was created in China, and its original name was Getsap or Catesap.
Today, we're going to reveal some fast food secrets. By now, we've all learned that we never get the exact same food that we see in ads. But there is way more stuff to know about how fast food companies make us buy stuff. It's like they make your brain order, "Ooh, I've seen something delicious. Get that for me ASAP. Ooh." Well, imagine entering a food court and smelling all that beautiful food. As you walk by, one smell stands out from the others. Fresh baked Cinnabon. Yeah, they do bake them, but the smell that reaches your nose doesn't come straight from the oven. Cinnabon bakery chains place their ovens near their front door to attract customers. That smell isn't just coming from the oven, though. The staff heats baking sheets with sprinkled cinnamon and brown sugar to keep the sweet aroma in the air all day long. These smells make you feel hungry, even though your stomach isn't empty. Let me introduce you to aroma marketing. The aim here is to make products irresistible. Did you notice the unique scent of crispy fries from McDonald's? It's the same smell in all stores worldwide. This is a pre-planned strategy. You smell these aromas and your body increases ghrelin production. Ghrelin is the hunger hormone, by the way. Your stomach produces it, so yeah, these smells can stimulate your appetite. Another strategy to lure customers is to use the power of colors. They also trigger your appetite. Think about the most famous fast food restaurant logos and the colors used inside and in their branding. Slogans, mascots, or meals can change, but nearly all well-known fast food chains go with a similar color palette. There's no coincidence. Research proves that these warm colors activate your hunger. Also, they grab your attention. Think about it as a traffic light or a stop sign. You kind of want to stop. Now, in the past, people burned many calories to find food. Are you going to hunt some animals and gather some herbs? No. You just need to walk into a cafe around the corner to get your food in 5 minutes. Since this food is not expensive and is served fast, your brain's reward system favors it. Convenience is also addictive, like sugar. Brands are aware of this, and this leads us to the next fact. Businesses know how our brains work and manipulate them. If you're asked if you want to have a larger size of fries or drink, it's likely you'll say yes. Every brand earns millions of dollars just by upsizing the menus, for instance. Upsizing costs less, but oops, you've actually just spent more than you intended. The pricing format and dollar menu are also a part of this trick. You see numbers advertised as only $5.89. It's almost $6, but your brain associates it with the number 5 because you see 5 written there, not 6. Plus, the currency signs are sometimes small and hard to read. You go for a la carte option, but they're placed on the sides and extra value meals flash out. When you look at the prices, a place in your brain called the orbitofrontal cortex takes control. Research shows that when a person buys something, knowing there's a better deal among the options, The brain activity shows signs of pain. There's a good offer, but if you take it, you end up eating more. Maybe you only want to buy a burger and you end up with fries and a drink. On the other hand, it's good if that was your intention all along. I can't argue with that. Do you know that your burgers are wrapped in grease-repelling paper? This means that this paper might contain harmful chemicals. Researchers tested samples taken from 400 containers and wrappers from fast food chains. They discovered that 38% of sandwich and burger wrappers contain fluorine, a rather toxic substance. And it's not just sandwich and burger wrappers. They found that 56% of dessert and bread wrappers and 20% of French fry sleeves contain fluorine. So, sadly, not just fast food, but also its packaging can be harmful. Now here's another trick. When you're on your way to get a snack from the drive-thru, the machines will recognize your license plate, and based on your previous purchases, they will flash similar options in front of you. Another thing about drive-thrus is that they place cameras there. Sometimes you just talk through the buzzer. You can't see the staff, but beware, they can see you in some chains. Those use devices like magnetic sensors to notice vehicles. Then employees get notified via their headsets. They press a special button to activate their mics. Without sensors, cameras, and windows, how could they see you coming? They aren't psychic. Don't worry much though. Employees probably don't care what you do. I mean, they have a million other things to do instead. Now, let's assume you get a burger from the drive-thru. You have grilled meat in it. Wait a minute, is it really grilled? Shocking news, they add a solution, sort of a sauce with a grilled flavor to the meat, and make those fake grill lines on it. They can't grill meat at such short notice, but people like this look, so they go with this option. Speaking of faking it, fast food is very processed. I mean, the flavor in the burgers and nuggets is often gone in the process level of processed. To compensate for this, companies add special chemicals to give the food taste and aroma. Now earlier, we talked about the tricks companies use in drive-thrus. It's time to reveal the secrets of self-serve kiosks. You tend to spend more when you order your food via these kiosks. Restaurants expect that you'll spend about 20% more. The system in these kiosks is designed to upsell. Cashiers ask you questions, but while using a self-service kiosk, you don't feel rushed or maybe judged for your orders and choices. A lawsuit was filed in the U.S. about one fast food chain's tuna sandwich. It turns out that the ingredient advertised as tuna had no tuna in it. This was concluded by tests run in independent labs with multiple samples taken from this chain in California. The fast food chain said the claims didn't reflect the truth. So, we'll just wait and see. A fact about nuggets is here, and it's proven. This one might be hard to digest, but they often don't contain chicken. Scientists have tested them, and what they found is often only 50% meat. Apparently, there's a thing, sort of a process, called mechanically separated meat, and the remaining product comes from there. Fancy eating a Blizzard cone or parfait from DQ? No one could stop you, but you should know that technically, what you're eating isn't ice cream. Dairy Queen Soft Serve has 5% milk fat. The FDA says that a product has to have at least 10% of milk fat to be considered ice cream. But the company isn't keeping this fact to itself. It's written on its website. Now, what about discount coupons or free products? It's all part of the plan. Some people go to restaurants with coupons. They think, I might also get this or that since I'm already here. Most of them buy something else, and the item they buy is often more expensive than the free item on their coupon. Now sometimes, people want to go with healthier options in fast food chains. They might miss the point that healthy might not be healthy at the end of the day if the person orders a sauced chicken salad. They might end up having more calories than they would get from a burger. On top of this, healthier options often cost more in comparison to regular items. Anyway, this is an ever-lengthening list. After all, the fast food industry is huge. We're talking billions of dollars. Maybe that's why it comes with a lot of secrets behind the scenes. We've been talking about all this, and now I want to order a burger.
Picture this. It's a cloudy, misty morning in the middle of winter. Tom wakes up, a bit nervous for the day ahead. He's leaving on a long journey through uncharted waters. His captain says they will try to leave England and make it all the way to the Americas. He's ready and packed to leave his house when his wife reminds him to take the biscuits he had spent the night preparing. Let's zoom in on these biscuits right here. They look a bit strange, don't they? These are called ship's biscuits, and they were literally the biscuits that sailors ate during long voyages at sea. A ship's biscuit could go years without going bad. I know that sounds impossible, but the secret is in the ingredients and baking methods. When sailors departed, they didn't know how long they would go without setting foot on land again, so they needed to be ready, food-wise. Otherwise, they could perish from extreme hunger. So bakers came up with this simple biscuit. It's mostly made out of 3 ingredients: salt, flour, and a bit of water. The idea is that the dough stayed as stiff as it could. Then, bakers would put them in the oven for hours, at very low temperatures. The purpose of this slow baking was to take off all the moisture in the biscuits. Even if you're not an experienced sailor, you might suspect that moisture is the enemy of food preservation. It makes stuff get moldy and attracts insects and other animals. Plus, a ship is already an extremely moist environment. So the biscuits had to go on the countercurrent of all of that. A ship's biscuit can go 6, 7, 8 years without going bad. The little holes you see on them help to get the moisture out during the cooking process. A sailor like Tom, medium-sized, would get a portion of 6 to 8 ship's biscuits per day. They were extremely nutritious and satiated a person's hunger. Now, this was a type of survival food. It wasn't meant to be super pleasurable, yummy, or even give you all the nutrients you needed. Just the basics. Now, do you have any idea what life was like in the 18th century? If you think about a city like New York, there were only about 18,000 people living there. For comparison, today the city hosts more than 8 million people. Back then, if someone had to travel from New York to Boston, there wouldn't be any of the convenience stores there were along the way. I mean, there weren't even roads as we know them now. So, people needed to make food provisions. And this is where portable soup came in handy. If you imagined a boiling pot of meat and veggies, I'm sorry to inform you, you are wrong. Portable soup is hard and condensed. It looks like this. Portable soup is a type of solidified broth, a very, very condensed substance made essentially of meat. Think about it. It's convenient, it's light, it doesn't take up much space, but it's extremely hard to make. The best meat to make portable soup is one with a lot of collagen, like beef shank, and the secret is slow cooking. You can't lose sight of it though, because if it boils up, you ruin the whole thing. While cooking the meat, it will release its taste in the water in the pot, and after a few hours, it's safe to take the beef out. The remaining water will be rich in nutrients and fats, and once you reduce that down for about 18 to 24 hours, you'll get a gelatine-like nutritional substance. Once this cools down, it turns into a tablet of sorts. It's pretty amazing to witness the entire transformation process, but hey, this dark tablet is really satiable. And to eat it, you just needed to find some hot water and put the meat tablet inside of it. It would release all the condensed nutrients in it, giving you a warm, hearty meal. Here's a trick question for you. Do you know why hamburgers are called hamburgers if they are not made out of ham? Apparently, it has to do with the city they were first invented in, the city of Hamburg in Germany. But it wasn't what we are used to today. I mean, they didn't even use ketchup. Well, at least not the tomato ketchup we use now. But did you know that other types of ketchup have existed throughout history? As weird as it may sound, back in the 18th century, people ate mushroom ketchup. For your information, if you look up ketchup in some dictionaries, it is by definition a sauce made out of mushrooms. It has nothing to do with tomatoes. I wonder where people got that idea from. Anyways, to make it you can use any type of mushrooms. Even shiitake if you're feeling fancy. The idea is to smash them, cook them, and add a bunch of spices to the mix. I'm talking clove, nutmeg, ginger, pepper, and whatever else your palate wishes for. And in case you're wondering what our ancestors ate it with, I have one word for you: meat. They would pour mushroom ketchup over a nice piece of steak, for example, like a gravy sauce or something like it. Now, if this just left your mouth full of water, I have good news. You can still find mushroom ketchup in Great Britain. It's just North America that kind of forgot it. Neat, huh? And what did people eat back in the day? when they were feeling unwell. Today, we have a concept of food I particularly love, comfort food, which is something to eat when you are feeling down and sad. But then, on the days you're feeling sick, what do you eat? I immediately think of a warm soup or something nutritious and light. Our forefathers drank something called posset. Now, posset could be described as an eggnog with some sweets added into it. Its recipe can be traced down to as early as the 15th century. The drink was considered such a reliable remedy that Shakespeare even used it as a poison in Macbeth. Here's another quick pop quiz for you. Why do we say the proof is in the pudding? This famous expression simply means that you'll only know the true value of something once you experience it for yourself. The expression started to be used back in the 1600s, but there's an important thing to note here. In Britain, pudding is not the sweet dessert known by many in America. Rather, it's a savory dish, much like a pie. I guess it's safe to say that the British are good at turning almost anything into pie. From apple pie to pumpkin pie, chicken pot pie, and so on. Now, in the 18th century, they had something called beefsteak pie. This was an incredibly popular dish back then, but somewhere along the way we lost the habit of making it. Sure, you can find steak and kidney pudding today, but it's got all sorts of stuff in it, such as potatoes, carrots, and thick gravy. Up until the 19th century, people ate the stripped-down version of this dish, which was basically made out of richly flavored meat. They say breakfast is the most important meal of the day. If you're in the US, you might eat some avocado on toast or a rich bowl of cereal. If you're in Vietnam, you might enjoy a warm bowl of broth soup or rice. But if you were eating breakfast in 18th century England, or even the United States, you would get something like this. This is the old school version of what we know as bacon and eggs. Except that back then, it was called collops and eggs. According to the traditional Hannah Glass recipe, straight from the most famous cookbooks of back then, the egg wasn't fried or boiled. It was poached, and the bacon was probably not as processed as we eat them today. A little toast was added on the side, and there you had it. The perfect start for a long day.
From the iconic golden fries to a broken ice cream machine, here are 10 fast food secrets that the fast food industry doesn't really want you to know. Chicken nuggets. Those golden crispy bites you can get from fast food chains. They're even on the menu of school lunches. What if I tell you that they aren't actually made entirely out of chicken? Researchers took chicken nugget samples from unnamed fast food chains and analyzed them. They said that one sample, for instance, contained only 40% and another 50% of meat. The rest? Well, you're eating mouthfuls of things like fat, connective tissue, and bone spicules. Many fast food companies grind the meat with that stuff. They make mechanically formed orbs of chicken parts. Why? Perhaps it's because this method is cheaper and more profitable. Millions of restaurants worldwide have chicken nuggets on their menu. So, scientifically, it's not fair to say all nuggets are made this way, but a lot of studies imply so. The more the meat is processed, the more you lose the good stuff, like vitamin B6 and B12. The bitter truth is that companies add stuff, such as sodium, to the mixed paste. Sodium is added to get a better flavor. It's one of the ingredients that makes nuggets so yummy. Our bodies need sodium, but not too much of it. Unfortunately, most junk food contains more than our bodies can handle. So it might be a safe option to avoid eating these sorts of foods frequently. Chains dip their nuggets into tempura batter and fry them in hydrogenated oil. That's also not a green light regarding health, but this is how they catch the golden tint. They put additional stuff in nuggets. What about grilled chicken? In recent years, we've seen brands highlighting grilled chicken as a healthier option. Research has been done about grilled chicken too. And the same approach is applied here. Take chicken samples from iconic fast food companies and send those to labs for analysis. The results show that companies are misleading people by advertising these products by labeling them as healthy, natural, and 100% chicken breast. In reality, a couple of things are added to the meat to make it tender and juicy. Plus, these additives make it easier to cook the meat, freeze and transport it, and reheat it later without losing too much moisture. The drawback of all these additives is that they affect the nutritional value of the chicken breast. These ingredients aren't the healthiest for us. We should especially watch out for 3 things. The first one is again sodium. Fast food samples had 7 to 10 times more sodium than home-cooked chicken breast. Imagine you have a cheeseburger, but you say no to yourself and try to pick a less harmful menu item. Yet, some chicken sandwiches have the same amount or even more sodium than a cheeseburger with medium fries. The second thing you need to watch out for is phosphate additives. These additives allow the protein to conjoin more water. This means the white meat in the sandwich will appear juicier to you. Any word you see in the ingredients section that contains phos is a phosphate additive, so it's best to avoid them. The last thing you should avoid is sugars and starches, not just in grilled chicken, but pretty much in all fast food products. Oh, that's hard to digest, I admit. Cornstarch, sugar, malt, they come with grilled chicken breast. Buns and even some fries have sugar too. Everywhere I look, it's sugar. You see, home-cooked chicken has 0 grams of carbs, but the study samples had added sugar and up to 10% of the calories in the chicken breast comes from there. So what's the moral of this story? If you're a health-conscious diner, you should maybe go for other options. There are secret recipes from companies like KFC and Coca-Cola. No company wants to share the ingredients that make their food irresistible, but with a little research, you can decipher many things. You want to know the secret of McDonald's fries? It's written on their website. They add beef flavoring to the frying oil. This may sound weird, but apparently, that's a known practice amongst chefs and restaurants. Duck fat has also been used as a flavor, for example, in high-end restaurants. I'm a fries lover, so I added another fact about fries. Sadly, they're even saltier than you think. Experts suggest that a grown-up should consume at most 2,300 milligrams of sodium daily. Guess the McD's large fries sodium number. At least 400 milligrams. Classic fries from Burger King have 732 milligrams, and Five Guys take the level even higher with 962 milligrams of sodium. Next time, maybe you can ask workers to go easy on the salt as a solution. Picture this. You're in a hurry, but your tummy says, "Feed me, or I'll affect your mood and make life miserable for you." For a quick snack, you enter a fast food chain restaurant. You order your favorite burger. It looks and smells as if it's just been taken from the grill and served. Nope. They have different types of grills designed for this that can cook meat super quickly. Sorry to bear the bad news, but those perfect grill marks on your burger aren't real tools. The factory adds them. If you want to know how clean an eatery is, look under the ice chute of the soda machine in places where you can get your own drink. There you go, Inspector. You solved the case. Various studies say that if such machines aren't cleaned correctly, dirty, contaminated ice can lead to some health problems. There could be mold or bacteria there. Ew! The process of cleaning ice machines isn't easy. The same thing applies to ice cream machines too. Rumor has it that those ice cream machines aren't out of order. Employers just cannot find time to clean them properly. Now, what's the best time to get a good and fresh meal? Here are 2 opinions, and they both have solid reasonings. The first team recommends avoiding ordering grilled food in chains from 7 to after midnight. Many former employees say that sometimes they had taquitos or hot dogs prepared at around 4 or 5 a.m., but kept waiting to serve them till around midnight. That's not healthy. The other team says you should order between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. or between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. to get the freshest meal. Since it's going to be around lunch and dinner time, there'll be circulation and you can get decent food. Fast food companies have marketing, design, and psychological tricks to lure you in and make you order. Yet, they don't want you to stay inside for too long. If you were dining in mood lighting, you know under dim lamps and candlelight, you would take your time to eat. As the name suggests, you should be fast like your food in chain restaurants. They have fluorescents and they're in full light. Similarly, the floors and tables have reflective surfaces that make food look nice and bright. Plus, music is usually fast and loud. It's done to prevent you from spending hours there. Yet, they want you to take advantage of the first 20 minutes after your purchase. The faster you eat, the longer it will take you to feel full. Scientists say it takes about 20 minutes for our stomachs to inform our brain, okay, now I'm full. It's a good idea to eat in a clean area, but most of these companies are using cleaning products that have super strong chemicals. Assume that the staff cleaned the place at the end of their shift. They wiped down the soda machine and grill surface, and then you showed up early the next day. You may get some of that chemical residue on your food compared to other customers visiting the place later in the day. The vegan patty may not be 100% vegan. I'm talking about the grill, not the meat itself. In most of the chains, vegan burgers are cooked on the same grill as meat burgers. Do you have fast food chain secrets you want to share? Tell them to fellow Brightsiders in the comments. Flies are everywhere we go, literally. It's believed that flies originated in Asia, but these days, they live everywhere people live, only excluding Antarctica and maybe a couple of islands. Flies have traveled the oceans following humans, but they never go anywhere alone. In the wilderness and deserts where humans are absent, you won't find any flies. We know them well, but we all have that unanswered question about flies. Why do flies rub their limbs? Turns out, they just clean them. It's this simple. A fly has hair all over its body. The hairs on the limbs serve as detectors for flying, finding food, and doing whatever else the fly business is. They have to keep their limbs clean at all times. So, they just rub them every time they get a chance. Their limbs are sensitive, and they serve more than one purpose. Apparently, the limbs have taste receptors, so the flies can taste with their feet. They can land on their potential meal and wander around it, giving it a good taste before consuming it. Flies can't chew, so they're on an all-liquid diet and drink their food. If the food they have picked as their next meal is solid, they have a special ritual to make it edible. A fly regurgitates digestive juices on their soon-to-be food, and those juices break it into the smallest pieces that can be drunk. Also, spitting out those juices frees up space in their stomachs for new food. Quite often, flies sit on our food. They can appear harmless, but it's not exactly true. First, remember that they spill out those juices onto your food, which is already gross enough. But there's more. You have to keep in mind that flies land everywhere, and it's not always flowers, but all the gross stuff as well. And flies especially like that said gross stuff, like rotting foods, dumpsters, and even worse. So, their limbs collect all the germs and microbes from those places. When a fly lands on your food, it transfers those germs to your meal. Some of the microbes they transfer can even cause diseases like cholera and typhoid. There was even an experiment once made to demonstrate how it works. There were two bowls. One contained a red powder of some kind of spice, and the other bowl had white rice in it. Flies were let in, and they would migrate from the spice bowl to the rice bowl and back. Soon enough, rice got covered with red spice. Now, replace harmless spice with something grosser, and rice with your dinner. So you should always cover your food to make sure some fly doesn't take a walk on it and step and spit all over it. If you're eating, make sure you swat them away. But don't worry if some annoying fly manages to sit on your sandwich for a second before you kick it out. No need to throw the sandwich out. If you acted fast, then you're safe. Also, experts say that an average healthy human has a strong enough immune system to repel parasites. Even though flies are gross and annoying, bugging around and tickling you with their limbs, they do serve some good. They're responsible for pollinating flowers. They collect nectar from them, which gets stuck to their hair on their bodies, and then they pollinate the next flower when landing on it. Also, if flies didn't exist, our planet would be even dirtier. Flies recycle some of the human waste. Flies are also an important part of the ecosystem since they're food for birds, spiders, lizards, frogs, and many more. Without flies, they'd all go extinct. Apart from flies having the superpower of tasting with their feet, there are other interesting facts about them too. They can walk on both horizontal and vertical surfaces, and even upside down. They can do it because each one of a fly's feet has two pads with tiny hair. and those hairs produce a glue-like substance that allows flies to have an excellent grip. Flies have unique eyes, which have a large complex of 3,000 to 6,000 simpler eyes within each of the 2 compound eyes. A fly's eyes don't move, but its vision is nearly 360 degrees. They can see behind their back, so wherever you are, a fly definitely sees you, and every other danger with one or a few of their thousands of monitors. In addition to the 2 compound eyes, flies also have 3 simple eyes located on their foreheads, which serve as a compass and allow a fly to navigate. They also have an amazing reaction time. Ever wondered why it's so hard to swat a fly? Well, to a fly, we're sloths. That's because they see things in slow motion compared to us. Species have different perceptions of speed. The speed we see will be twice faster for a turtle, and it will be 4 times slower for a fly. Turn a video on at 0.25 times speed and imagine someone approaching you with this speed. Well, that's how a fly sees you. So yes, it has enough time to escape. A fly has just 1 set of wings. But in addition to their pair of wings, they also have so-called halters, which allow them to take off fast. Millions of years ago, halters were serving as a second pair of wings. Now they help to take off and also to balance the air. If a fly loses one of the halters, it'll start flying in circles. And if both of them go missing, it won't be able to fly anymore at all. Also, even though their wings beat up to 1,000 times per minute, they're also very slow flyers, only reaching the speed of 4.5 miles per hour. If a fly lives in an urban area with enough people and garbage around, it doesn't fly far away from the place of residence, only having a territory of a bit over 3,200 feet. Rural flies are far more explorative, and they can fly away up to 7 miles at a time. A fly doesn't live long. Its lifetime is just around 30 days, but during this time, they lay from 500 to 800 eggs each on average. But it's not 1,000 at once, it's several goes throughout their life, with 75 to 100 eggs at once. The eggs hatch within 24 hours, and it takes a week in total for an egg to turn into a grown fly, and then the cycle continues. In colder climates, this process can take twice as long. A timberfly is the biggest fly species, which lives in Central and South America. They can grow up to 3.15 inches. Also, flies have beds, or more like their favorite spot to stay and sleep. They have a comfy place, somewhere close to their source of food, and they come there to rest at night. If you ever had your house flooded with flies, here are a few tips for you to reduce their population. First, it's important to understand what they're attracted to. They're attracted to other flies, and even to the smell of flies living there. And flies have an amazing sense of smell. So, if you hosted even one fly, expect to get more guests. If you have any traces of flies, like fly specks, they'll find you too. Make sure to wash your walls and surfaces. Next, flies love garbage and rotting produce. They lay eggs in rotten food and meat, so make sure to keep your food in the fridge, cover it, and keep the trash in tightly sealed containers. And of course, take out the trash regularly. Flies have a sweet tooth, or more like a sweet foot, since they taste with their feet, and they love syrup and other sugary liquids. They're also fond of soda and vinegar, so make sure to keep those stored and always wipe after yourself if you spill something. Lastly, they like to hide and live in dirty and leaky drains. They eat the bacteria from there, so always clear your drains and repair any leaks right away. Also, it'll help to seal all the cracks in your floor, ceiling, and walls if you have any. That's one of their ways to get into the house. Have you ever wondered why things are the way they are? Like, why are there holes in a takeout box? Don't worry, you're about to find out. Beanies, with all those fluffy pom-poms, are easily the most important accessories of wintertime. Turns out the real reason why they or other hats have pom-poms was not to make a fashion statement in the past.
One of the theories says that they were there to provide safety. French sailors used to wear hats with pom-poms so they wouldn't hit their heads on the walls or low ceilings and hurt themselves if they lost their balance in a rough sea. So it wouldn't be wrong to call pom-poms head bumpers. Ever notice those extra eyelets hiking boots have on their sides? One thing is for sure, even though it kind of makes sense, they're not there to provide ventilation for your feet so that they don't smell. They're there to prevent your shoes from moving and causing you to slip and fall while you're hiking, climbing, or descending a hill. When you're going on your next adventure, make sure to tie your laces through them to tighten your boots for a better fit. You're at a barbecue party with your friends. The host serves cold drinks and long neck bottles to everyone. You think to yourself, why do bottles have long necks anyway? There are two reasons for that. The first one is to reduce the cost of packaging. The narrower the neck is, the smaller cap you need, and the second reason is to make sure that your drink stays cool longer. When you hold the bottle from its neck, not its body, the heat coming from your hand won't warm up the rest of your drink. The color of plastic tags on bread packages indicates which day of the week the bread was baked. Even though some companies have their own color codes, it generally goes like this: Monday, blue; Tuesday, green; Thursday, red; Friday, white; and Saturday, yellow. So pick accordingly to get the freshest bread. You're feeling too lazy to cook dinner, so you go to your favorite restaurant to order takeout. You come home feeling excited that you're about to have a delicious meal. You open the takeout box only to find out that your food became soggy because of the moisture built up inside of it. Well, this secret purpose is going to help you prevent that from happening ever again. Notice the perforated tabs in the corners of the container's lid? You need to push them down to allow the steam to escape from the holes. If you have a hot meal, that is. If you're one of those lucky people who have a dishwasher at home, you're going to feel even luckier once you learn what else you can wash in it. Aside from making your dishes clean and shiny, it can also clean up your makeup brushes for you. Just place them inside the silverware tray to remove all the dirt and excess product that built up amongst the bristles. You went to the farmer's market and bought some fresh fruits and vegetables. You want to wash the dirt off them, especially potatoes, before placing everything in the fridge. Don't waste your time washing them all one by one. Place them in your dishwasher and set it to the rinsing cycle with cold water. Don't use detergent for this, though. Are you one of the many people who use the drawer under their oven or stove as storage? Sorry to inform you, but storing skillets, cookie sheets, and muffin pans is not their purpose. It's called a warming drawer, and it's meant to keep your cooked dishes warm and delicious. So, if your guests are running late, just put that casserole you've made in it until they arrive. Keep in mind that not all oven models have this feature. Some drawers are for broiling, and some can indeed be used as storage. Check with the manual to make sure what yours is. Oranges, lemons, and avocados come in mesh bags most of the time. When you go back home from the grocery store, you probably throw those into the trash, don't you? But did you know that you can also use them as a pot scrubber? You just need to tie them up. Then you can get to cleaning those dirty dishes, pots, and pans. You can even turn them into single-use scrubbers for other kitchen appliances or your sink. If you're at a store looking for new hangers to organize your closet, we suggest you buy the ones made of cedar wood instead of plastic ones. First of all, cedar wood acts as a natural repellent. Pests like moths, fleas, lice, silverfish, ants, gnats, and ticks won't come near your clothes and closet if you use them. The second reason why you should invest in them is that they absorb unwanted odors from your clothes as well as moisture. And this feature helps prevent mold, so you can wear your favorite dress or suit for longer. It's that time of week again, Taco Tuesday. You invite a couple of friends over to enjoy some homemade tacos, but even though you have the recipe for making tortillas, you don't know how to give them that perfect taco shell shape. Well, this hidden use might help. If you have a muffin tray at home, then you have all you need.
Just flip it upside down and place the small tortillas in between the cups. Bon appetit! If you love sewing and making your own clothes, then you must be used to using those tomato pin cushions, which almost always come with a small strawberry tassel. But why is it there? First of all, you can push the needle you're currently using or your favorite one in there so that you don't need to search for it amongst the other needles all the time. And secondly, it's filled with emery, which will help clean and sharpen your needles once they go in there. Are you a Team Ketchup or Team Mayo? Ketchup fans must have noticed the number 57 on those Heinz ketchup bottles. That number is placed where it is on the bottle for a very specific reason. You must have struggled with getting ketchup out of the bottle at least once in your life, and at that moment, you probably tried shaking it until the right amount of ketchup fell onto your plate, right? Well, no need to do that anymore. Just firmly tap on the spot where 57 is written on the bottle neck, and you can get ketchup out of the bottle way quicker. You might have noticed that there are 2 holes in an oil can where you are filling it up or pouring it, and you maybe thought to yourself, that must be there to make it easier for me to pour it into smaller containers. But that's not the case. That hole is there to prevent oil from spilling all over, or glugging, so to say. So you need to uncap it before you pour oil from the larger hole to prevent wasting it or having to clean everywhere. Have you ever taken classes to improve your typing speed on a keyboard? If your answer is yes, then you might be disappointed to learn that keyboard manufacturers most likely wanted to slow you down. A popular theory says that's why the letters on a keyboard are arranged randomly and not in alphabetical order. The reason for that goes all the way back to typewriters. Their keys used to be arranged in alphabetical order, which allowed people to write really fast. And because of that, the keys would jam and tangle up easily, and they wanted to avoid that. That's how we ended up having the QWERTY keyboards we have today. Here's a bonus hidden feature for you before you leave. The clock app on your iPhone shows you what time it is on the little screen icon as well. Are you ready for a spicy adventure? Let's talk cinnamon. It's a cool spice that most of us sprinkle on our oatmeal, toast, and apple pies. But did you know that some sneaky sellers out there are trying to sell us fake cinnamon? So, how can you spot the imposter? Well, the real deal is called Siouxland cinnamon, while the fake stuff is usually cassia cinnamon. One way to tell is by looking at the cinnamon sticks themselves. Real cinnamon is lighter in color and has a thinner, more delicate bark. The fake stuff, on the other hand, is darker and thicker. But don't worry, you don't have to be a cinnamon connoisseur to enjoy the real deal. Just make sure to read the label and look for Siouxland cinnamon. Your taste buds will thank you. Is white chocolate real or just an imposter? Well, it's time to settle this sweet debate once and for all. Some people say it's not even chocolate because it doesn't contain cocoa solids. But let's not judge a book by its cover or chocolate by its color, right? Technically, white chocolate is made from cocoa butter, milk, and sugar, which makes it a distant cousin to the darker cocoa solid packed chocolate varieties. But hey, if you ask me, family is family, even if they don't look or taste the same. And don't let anyone tell you white chocolate isn't delicious, because it absolutely is. Its smooth, creamy texture and sweet, buttery flavor make it a delightful treat on its own, or in baked goods like cookies and cakes. So, whether you consider white chocolate to be real chocolate or not, let's just agree that it's a yummy indulgence that we can all enjoy. Are French fries truly French? Hold on to your potatoes because it turns out that the origins of this snack are a bit more complicated than you might think. While it's true that French cuisine has given us some of the world's most delicious dishes, including escargot and coq au vin, the origins of French fries are actually traced back to Belgium. That's right, our crispy little friends were first cooked up in the land of waffles and chocolate. But here's where things get even more interesting. The reason they're called French fries is actually because of the way they're prepared, not because of their country of origin. You see, the term French in this context refers to the technique of slicing the potatoes into long, thin strips known as julienne cut. This technique was popularized in France in the 18th century, which is how the name French fries came to be. Want to add some egg rolls to this order? I mean, sure, they're delicious and all, but what's with all the fuss around this dish? First of all, let's talk about the egg part. Despite their name, egg rolls don't contain any eggs. Instead, the egg part comes from the thin, crepe-like wrapper that's made with eggs. It's like a little egg blanket that keeps all the tasty ingredients snuggled up inside. But what about the filling, you ask? Well, that's where things get interesting. Egg rolls can be filled with just about anything your heart desires. Veggies, meat, seafood, you name it. Some people even like to throw in a little cheese or rice for good measure. Now, here's where it gets a little weird. There's a bit of a debate in the egg roll world about whether they should be fried or baked. I say go for the fried version. There's just something about that crispy golden brown shell that can't be beaten. You might need to sit down for this one. Strawberries aren't berries, but bananas are. Mind blown yet? Here's the deal. A berry is defined as a fleshy fruit produced from a single type of cell. And guess what? Bananas fit the bill perfectly. They might not be as juicy as a watermelon or as tart as a raspberry, but they're berries. We might call them koala bears, but we couldn't be more wrong. Koalas aren't bears. These cute and cuddly critters are marsupials, which means they carry their little ones in a pouch. And while they may look a little bit like teddy bears, they aren't related to them. But hey, we can't blame people for thinking koalas are bears. After all, they do have that fluffy fur and round ears that make them look like they're ready for a hug. But koalas are their own unique species. They have all these amazing features that make them special, like their eucalyptus diet and their ability to sleep for up to 22 hours a day. Seriously, how do they do that? In case you didn't know the history of the Boston cream pie, you're in for a surprise. First off, let's just get one thing straight. Boston cream pie is not a pie. I know, it's in the name, but trust me on this one. It's a delicious cake filled with creamy custard and topped with a luscious chocolate glaze. Now, you might be thinking, why is it called a Boston cream pie then? Well, legend has it that it was invented by a chef at the Parker House Hotel in Boston way back in 1856. The chef, who apparently had a sense of humor, decided to call it a pie just to mess with people. And, well, the name just stuck. But let's not forget about the real star of this dessert, the custard filling. Smooth, creamy, and just the right amount of sweetness. It's what makes this cake stand out. And that chocolate glaze on top, it's like the icing on the cake. Literally. Is a peanut a nut? It sounds like a silly question, but you'd be surprised how many people get confused about this. So let's clear it up once and for all. Peanuts are legumes. That's right, they're in the same family as beans and lentils. But don't worry, we won't hold it against them. After all, they're still delicious and nutritious snacks. But here's where it gets really interesting. Even though peanuts aren't technically nuts, they can still cause nut allergies. That's because they contain similar proteins to tree nuts, like almonds and walnuts. So if you have a nut allergy, you'll want to be careful around peanuts too. Have you ever found yourself using the term tinfoil to refer to aluminum foil? You're not alone. A lot of people use the two interchangeably. But why is that? Years ago, aluminum foil was made of tin. Back in the late 1800s, before aluminum was cheap and abundant, people used tinfoil to wrap up their food and keep it fresh. But when aluminum foil came along, it quickly became the more popular choice because it was cheaper and easier to produce. So how come we still call it tinfoil? Some think it's because aluminum foil was first marketed as tinfoil, and the name just stuck with most people. Others think it's because the two materials have similar properties, so people started using the two terms interchangeably. But whatever the reason, one thing is for sure. Tinfoil just sounds cooler than aluminum foil. You might be surprised to know that your trusty Pyrex dishes aren't Pyrex at all. Now, don't get me wrong, the knockoff still gets the job done, but it's just not the same. Be sure to check the label on your glassware before you go around thinking you're buying good stuff. Here's a cheat sheet to help you figure out what kind of container you have in your cupboard. If you see Pyrex with a lowercase p on a dish, that means it's not safe for the oven or microwave. It's most likely made of soda lime glass. Stick to using these containers for food storage. On the other hand, if you see Pyrex in all caps, you're in luck. This cookware is made of a special type of glass and can be heated in the oven or microwave. Just don't pop it under the broiler. Things could get messy. And if you're taking your Pyrex from the fridge to the oven, be sure to let it sit at room temperature for 30 minutes to avoid any glass fractures.
The national Jamaican fruit, ackee, has a truly unique taste. It's mild and buttery, and people who tried it say it tastes just like scrambled eggs. It's safe to eat ackee only as long as it's fully ripe. So the import of raw ackees was banned in the US almost 50 years ago. The only edible part is the white creamy flesh itself. The pink flesh looks mouthwatering, but don't fall for it, it's highly toxic. Same with the black seeds. Soursop is one more fruit banned from the US because of its toxins. It's also referred to as guanabana and can release toxic substances, leading to some very unpleasant effects if not ripe. Soursop fans, don't be sad. Chances are you might find some frozen pulp in supermarkets. Another thing that should be 100% ripe to be safe is elderberry. Raw elderberry is rich in vitamin C, which is good for you, and cyanide, which is not that good. These berries are quite popular though. You can find them in pies, syrups, teas, jams, you name it. Fully ripe and cooked berries aren't dangerous. And nope, it's not banned. Cyanide doesn't seem that serious when it comes to food with tetrodotoxin, which is 1,200 times stronger. Pufferfish is a Japanese delicacy, and it's loaded with the substance. No person can eat this fish without consequences, but Japanese chefs have mastered their skills to perfection. To make it edible, they simply remove the poisonous parts. This delicacy is called fugu and costs about $200 per portion. You could buy a whole bunch of totally safe salmon instead. It's almost completely banned in the US. There are only a few authorized places that sell it, but you probably don't feel like having such a gastronomic adventure either way. Casu marzu literally means rotten cheese. Sorry, you can't try a bite of it in the US, so in case you can't resist the temptation, just head to the island of Sardinia, Italy. In fact, it's just sheep milk cheese with a pinch of, let's say, magic. Special flies leave their eggs right inside that cheese, and they stay there for 40 days. At the moment it's ready for consumption, this cheesy delicacy has some live maggots taking care of decomposing it. Thanks to them, the cheese has that distinctive texture and spicy flavor. It's banned in the US for sanitary reasons. Unlike soft and creamy casu marzu, the Himalayan cheese chirpy is famous for being the world's hardest. Just like any regular product of this type, it's made from milk. What makes it different is that it stays fresh for up to 20 years. The milk is quite special too. The cows, which are actually a cross between cows and yaks, eat a variety of mountain herbs. This milk has a unique flavor thanks to those herbs. But be careful with your teeth nibbling on that hard as stone cheese. In Singapore, you'll never have cavities because of chewing gum. And nope, it's not because they take care of your teeth. The thing is, it's completely illegal there. This place is known for its cleanliness, and the country spent a fortune cleaning all the spots and banning chewing gum. It was prohibited back in 1992, and vendors had to stop the sales immediately to avoid super high fines. Walking down the supermarket aisles while traveling to different destinations, you may spot that there's no raw milk in stock. It's prohibited in many US states and other countries, including Canada, Norway, Finland, Sweden, Denmark, and Scotland, for sanitary reasons. While raw milk is a no-go for Scotland, haggis is completely fine there. Still, it's banned in the US. If you live in the States and you're under 45, chances are you've never tried haggis, since it was prohibited almost half a century ago. This Scottish pudding is made of a full range of sheep's inner parts, mixed with some oatmeal and spiced up with a bunch of minced onions. Oh, and don't forget suet and some broth. The texture is crumbly and coarse, and no surprise, the dish is quite spicy. It's usually served with mashed potatoes or mashed turnip. Cassava is a poisonous tropical root with two types. The sweet variation does contain some cyanide, but it's enough to cook it to reduce the toxic content to a non-toxic level. To get rid of all the toxins in bitter cassava, it's necessary to grate the root, then soak it, and finally cook properly to make it edible. This root is very starchy, and its flavor is really subtle. Cassava can be used just like potatoes, mashed, boiled, or fried.
What you think? How about some haggis with mashed cassava instead of potatoes on the side?
By the way, harmless potatoes aren't that safe either. It all depends on whether it's ripe or not. So-called green potatoes are full of toxins, and potato sprouts are also quite unsafe. Same with green almonds and cashews, which are full of cyanide if not ripe enough. Luckily, the nuts we get at the supermarket are well processed, which means they're completely safe. Yellow plums, or Mirabelle plums, are banned in all the 50 states of America. These fruits are completely fine, and nothing bad happens if you eat them. But you can only enjoy these plums in Lorraine, France. The importation law is a bit bizarre, and this fruit is of protected origin. If sea bass is the kind of dish you just can't live without, then the UK isn't your destination. This fish has been recently banned there because of declines in the sea bass population. The same goes with beluga caviar in the US. One of the world's most expensive foods can't be found in America because of new regulations protecting the fish. Hey, feel like a burger with freshly cooked meat, the softest bun, and loads of ketchup? Go and grab it. Unless you're a French school student, there's a law in France regulating the use of ketchup in cafeterias for students, and they're only allowed to have it with, you guessed it, French fries. Greenland shark bodies get rid of all the waste they produce, filtering it through their flesh and skin, so no wonder their flesh is toxic. Sounds like a fair reason not to eat them, but not in Iceland. Hakarl, which is processed shark meat, is first hung to dry for 3 to 5 months. In the end, you get something like ammonia-smelling fermented fish with the jelly texture that reminds you of wet bread. Some things get better with age, unless it's food. But there's one cafe in Bangkok where they've been cooking the same beef and noodle soup for 45 years. This potion-like soup has been simmering for over 4 decades. The broth has never been thrown away, and it's always kept overnight for the next day's servings. One of the secrets of the unique flavor is the massive grease rim around the pan that formed because they never washed it. Okay, now I've got the perfect excuse to do the same thing. What? The food just tastes better this way. In Cambodia, you can try a crunchy, crispy snack that tastes somewhat like a crab. It's deep fried and a bit seasoned. The main ingredient is a tarantula. This doesn't quite sound like a lunch. Okay, well, you wouldn't have guessed it if I hadn't told you. This soup that sounds like a tongue twister is definitely scrumptious. The flavor is sharp, yet delicate, and it tastes just like shrimp. Well, this traditional Laotian dish sounds really cool, until you realize it's made of ant eggs. To give it a bit of sourness, they also tend to add a few tiny ants. In Mexico, you don't throw away corn kernels that have turned black because they're rotten. You keep them as a culinary specialty called huitlacoche. Fungus all over the kernel give that earthy, woody smell. Yum, yum. Some dishes just need decoration, especially cakes and pies. In England, there's a pie called stargazy. The name speaks for itself. The sardines, accompanied by potatoes and eggs, peek out of the pie's crust and stare at the skies. And it looks a bit creepy. Sometimes it's the tails that point at the skies, though. Tea mushroom is another weird thing that they drink in Eastern Europe, together with acid milk-based drinks. It's basically some fermented black or green tea. It's made by adding a whole culture of bacteria. They're not consumed, they just ferment the drink. To sweeten tea, the sugar acts like yeast. Add juice, spice, or whatever you want to taste. Enjoy! Or at least try to. Tuna eyeballs are quite a popular delicacy in China and Japan. They need to be boiled before eating, and some seasoning is required too. If you nail it, you'll have a delicacy that tastes like squid. And it costs less than $1. I bet you're eyeing that one.
You know how it's easy to gain extra fat when you consume greasy foods packed with empty calories or high in sugar? But if you know the right foods to eat, they'll make you feel full and help you burn fat much faster. And you'll get some extra space to enjoy cheat meals from time to time. Spoiler, you can even eat a certain type of popcorn. But first things first. Medium-sized bell pepper has about 30 calories. You can hollow them out, stuff them with ground turkey or ground beef and couscous, and just put them in the oven. Another option is to slice them and throw those sticks into a stir-fry. Now, eggs are high in protein, and that protein is so filling you probably won't be able to eat too much of it. It's the digesting protein kind that will put your metabolism to work because of the thermic effects of food. That's the amount of energy your body needs to absorb, digest, and metabolize all the foods you consume. The thermic effects of food will take around 10% of the total caloric intake. So, if you eat 2,000 calories in a day, your body will burn about 200 of them just while eating food, and powering all the other processes connected with it. If you make an omelet and add cheese and whole milk with sugar, that's different. But eggs themselves are different since they're one of the best protein sources you can get. Salmon is next on the menu. If possible, try to look for wild-caught instead of farm-raised salmon. When salmon is raised on farms, they start mooing like cows. Nah, it mostly contains more calories and fat with a higher ratio of omega-6s. And the majority of people already consume too much of it. You can see it yourself if you place farm-raised and wild-caught salmon next to each other. The farm-raised kind has thicker white lines that represent streaks of fat. Salmon is generally very filling and high in protein. Now, celery is 95% water, which makes it one of the lowest calorie foods you'll find. It's quite filling and will provide your body with the nutrients it needs, such as calcium, potassium, and antioxidants. Antioxidants are elements that slow down the process of damaging cells in your body. It produces free radicals and unstable molecules as a reaction to your outer surroundings. They're guilty of cell damage, so your job is to balance your diet to keep your body safer. You can try spicing up that celery meal with some low-calorie dip such as salsa. An average container of salsa has approximately 130 calories. Hot sauce is also great. It doesn't contain calories and goes pretty well with foods high in protein, such as tuna, eggs, or chicken. Vegetables like celery and peppers will do fine too. Chilies contain an active ingredient called capsaicin. It's what makes the chili hot. This ingredient can speed up your metabolism, which helps you burn more calories in a shorter period. Spinach is definitely one of the lowest calorie veggies. Most of the spinach is water anyway, and 1 cup has only 7 calories. Most of them come from insoluble fiber. That means you'll be full, but at the same time, you won't stuff yourself with a bunch of unnecessary calories. And you'll get pretty cool nutrients like potassium, magnesium, and vitamins. It's easy to prepare it since it cooks in a very short time. You can also eat it raw or add it to your smoothies. A couple of other green veggies that will help you maintain a healthy weight are broccoli and kale. Broccoli is high in fiber, which means it'll keep you full for a longer time. You can steam it or eat it raw and serve it as a great side dish. It has 31 calories per cup, and kale has 33. Now, believe it or not, humans have most likely been eating kale for the past, 3,000 years. Writings from early Rome mention leafy green plants that likely included kale, too. It's packed with vitamins A, C, and K and grows best in winter and fall in cooler weather, so store it in a cool place. Kale is also great for smoothies if you like the taste of it when it's raw. Another option is to spray some kale leaves with a bit of olive oil and bake them. Now, any cauliflower fans out there? Yup, it's not something you'll probably crave, but it has only 27 calories per cup, so it's a good choice when you're running out of dietary ideas. If you're not a fan of raw vegetables, you can always steam it and flavor it with spices and herbs, or a little bit of lemon zest. You could also bake it. Cauliflower is great when you need an alternative for high-carb side dishes like rice or potatoes. You can slice cauliflower into small pieces and cook it on a frying pan, or boil it and make mashed cauliflower. You can add a bit of butter to it because it's a low-calorie food that leaves you some space to cheat. Cauliflower is a great choice when you want to make a low-carb pizza, too. Really, it's good. How about adding more soup to your diet? It's at least 90% water, and the rest depends on the ingredients you prefer. You can make it out of healthy, nutritious vegetables and combine it with foods high in protein like chicken, fish, beef, mushroom, tomato soup. If you make a creamy soup, you'll be full, so you'll automatically want to eat less and won't be able to eat that much heavier food. Zucchini definitely deserves to be on this list. It's low in calories, and you can also prepare it in so many ways. Zucchini pasta, noodles, baked zucchini fries, the list can go on. It can be an excellent replacement for pasta dishes, especially if you have a spiralizer that will help you make it nice and thin. The most flavorful ones are usually small to medium-sized. Although most people consider it a vegetable, zucchini comes from seeds and grows on the flowering part of the plant. That means it's technically a fruit. Avocado is a nutrient-dense food you can easily add to whichever recipe. It's full of good fats, almost 80% of its calories come from fat, and it's a fruit, not a vegetable. The darker its skin, the riper the avocado. And if you want to speed up the ripening process, just put your avocados in a paper bag with ripe bananas. The ethylene gas bananas produce will make your avocado ready to eat faster. You can fill avocado halves with salsa or sprinkle slices of it with some sea salt. Chicken breast is one of the leanest sources of protein you can have on your diet. It goes perfectly with some of the vegetables from the list when you want a light, low-calorie meal that will help your muscles recover and provide your body with protein. Healthy snacks are real. Nuts are one good example. They're a great source of healthy fats and protein, which means they'll help you stay full longer. Take a handful of pistachios, almonds, hazelnuts, or macadamia nuts instead of chips, French fries, and other junk food. To make them last longer, take nuts in shells. If you're craving some light and nutritious, but at the same time refreshing snack, take a cup of frozen grapes. It will satisfy your sweet tooth without adding too many points to your calorie intake. If you're not a fan of grapes, try frozen bananas. If you like to munch popcorn while watching movies or your favorite TV show, don't worry, it's also on the list of low-calorie foods. This snack will make you gain extra body fat and weight if you eat too much of it, of course, especially if you choose a package with a lot of added butter. But if you take a regular corn package you can prepare at home without too much oil and butter, you're good. Popcorn contains a lot of fiber, which means it's hard for you to eat too much of it. And it's definitely easier to overeat stuff like potato chips than healthier snacks such as popcorn. Now, a single serving container of Greek-style or some other low-fat yogurt is another option for you. It's an easy, ready-to-go snack you can combine with frozen or fresh fruit, ground flaxseed, or even reduced-fat granola. Watermelon contains more than 90% water. Foods with a higher percentage of water are in most cases low in calories and quite filling, so you probably won't eat too much of it. 1 cup of watermelon has less than 50 calories. Bonus, it'll help you stay hydrated during hot summer days. Speaking of foods that are mostly water, here's one you can eat in big amounts and add to your salads: cucumber. Vitamin A, beta-carotene, fiber, you get it all. And all you need is to slice the cucumber and sprinkle it with some salt. And here comes the best part. Even if you slip up from time to time and treat yourself to something you really like, it shouldn't do you much bad as long as you stick to a healthy basic diet. Got that? Over 100 years ago, an 11-year-old boy left his drink on a porch during a cold night. The glass was filled with powdered soda dissolved in water and a stirring stick to mix it up. 20 years later, Frank Epperson, that very forgetful boy, presented his accidental invention, the popsicle, in a California park. There's no record of the original popsicle flavor, but among the very first were cherry, the most popular one, lemon, orange, banana, watermelon, grape, and even root beer. Chocolate chip cookies are somewhat younger than popsicles, having been invented in the 1930s. Ruth Wakefield, the owner of a popular restaurant named the Toll House Inn, is considered to be the inventor of these scrumptious cookies. There are various stories behind this invention. One story claims that Ruth ran out of baker's chocolate and decided to replace it with some basic semi-sweet chocolate, expecting it would melt completely, but it didn't. Another story says some chocolate just accidentally fell into the batter. Ruth denied the accidental origin of her cookies, claiming that it was all done deliberately. There are many legends behind the creation of the potato chip. One claims they were invented in 1853 by a chef at a luxurious New York restaurant. French fries were one of the specials at this restaurant, and people seemed to love them. But there was one customer who wasn't satisfied with the quality, complaining they were too thick. When the chef, George Crumb, not crummy at all, cooked thinner French fries, the picky customer complained again. George deliberately made his next batch of fries paper thin. These fries were so thin, it was impossible to eat them with cutlery. Surprisingly, the finicky eater loved the dish. The chips recipe spread, and within a few decades, potato chips could be found in all the American grocery stores, turning from a hot dish to a fast snack. Worcestershire sauce is another product that wasn't invented deliberately. Two English chemists, John Willie Lee and William Henry Perrins, simply forgot about some barrels in the pharmacy basement for a couple of years. The first mixture they had made was totally inedible due to super strong flavor. But when they forgot some barrel of the mixture in the basement, it became fermented. When the chemists rediscovered the barrels and were curious to try it, they found that the taste had mellowed. This condiment is now used to intensify even those dishes that originally didn't have it. For example, chili con carne. Worcestershire sauce is part of the fifth flavor, umami, or savoriness, which explains its rich taste. Tofu, or bean curd, was invented centuries ago. One of its origin theories is that tofu was first created by a Chinese prince. Another theory claims that tofu appeared as a result of mixing boiled ground beans and